Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining. Shortly, we'll be starting shortly. We're just waiting for a few more people to join before we get started. And yeah, hope everybody is having a great day today.
Thank you for joining. We appreciate you all so much. It's a blessed day, and we're grateful, to God for such a beautiful day, or for blessing us with such a beautiful day, and for us to be alive today. So yes, today we're sharing a few amazing things that, we are very passionate about. Just want to share. These are our thoughts and our our perspective on issues and things that we believe are important for the Black community, So let's just give it a few minutes and we'll get right into it.
Yeah. Hey, Francis.
Hello, Francis. It's good to have you. Otafrija. Oh my goodness. These are my beautiful people from Ghana. I appreciate you all so much, for the love.
Yeah.
It's always a blessing. And that's what you get from Africa, the love. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So today we're going to be talking about Africa as usual, because on Fridays we've dedicated it to talking about Africa, the beautiful continent of Black people. We want to be diving into different things that goes on in the continent and off the continent, and things that pertains to people both on the continent and of course outside of the continent, which is the diaspora, which is one of the things that we are very passionate about. So we'll be sharing these thoughts and things with people. The whole idea is to more or less, educate people and
share knowledge
share knowledge about the continent, because don't forget, we've had a whole lot of narratives from the past, that we can't keep having sad narratives. So we have to share a different. That is exactly what we intend to do.
Yeah.
Let's see if we have some people joining us from Instagram.
Yeah, we have 4 people joining us.
Instagram.
From Facebook, Instagram. Let's just.
So we're just here to have a conversation, and that's it. No,
Before we get started, if anybody has any questions,
you're free
to ask.
Yeah, even the topic I think has been put there today. We're talking about.
It's not telling me that we're live, but I know.
It's not.
So that's okay.
All right.
All right. Let's get going. We'll get started.
We have 3 people.
Yep.
That's beautiful. All right. So we'll get into it. We'll get into it. Now, today we'll be talking about establishing roots in Africa. Establishing roots in Africa. That's a very powerful, idea that I personally have come to believe in it even more since coming to this part of the world. Okay, this continent, America. I have come to believe, or better still, I've become more passionate about the idea of Black people all over the world, no matter where you are, establishing some type of roots on the continent. Now, when we talk about establishing roots on the continent, a lot of different things come to mind. The usual narrative that we've been hearing, which I don't like to usually go by, that is the fact that Black people outside of Africa should move bag and baggage, everything, abandon their families and move to Africa. That's the narrative that kind of you see around, that people throw around, and people use that as justifications why they don't want to consider Africa as a place to establish some roots at. And when I talk about establishing roots, I'm not just we're also looking at generation, which is very, very crucial. The next generation. Everything that you do today is about the next generation. I'm very key on that. And that is well. Okay. So now when somebody talks about, whoa, how about taking roots in Africa or establishing roots in Africa? The question they ask is, why should I do that? Why should I do that? I'm in America, or I'm in the UK. I'm in the Caribbean. Of course, I consider the Caribbean Africa. So, but yes, I'm like, why should I do that? Why do I have to take roots, or why should I establish myself in Africa? So that becomes a question that leaves us to answer. Because once we answer that question, that why should somebody in America, as a black person, think about establishing roots in Africa? Why should they do that? Now, what we want to do today is to give you some reasons why we believe that you should consider, if you have never considered that, and if you're considering that, but it's not really clear about why you should really do that. And I've had that question a lot, where he give you some, we believe, solid reasons why you should, and don't take these reasons lightly. I'm telling you, you may look, if you look at it at face value, you don't go deep, you wouldn't really catch it. But this is something I believe is crucial, that is worth talking about. You know, why should I have to do that? When I tell my wife, who's African American with Caribbean roots, look, it is important for you to establish some roots in Africa. You have to tolerate the idea and see how best you can establish roots. Because here's the thing. Last week I talked about becoming global citizens. There's nothing fun. We're not saying around America, but there's nothing so fun. And whatever you're building here, or if you've already taken root, established here in America, there's nothing wrong with establishing roots in Africa as well. So the next generation that you produce, that you come up with, anybody that you're connected with in that sense, that you can impact as a black person, you're giving them a reason to become global citizens. But the question maybe they'll ask even you, who is passionate about it, is why do I have to do that? You know, why isn't it okay to establish just roots in America and be comfortable with it and leave it at that? So today we'll give you some reasons. Today I'm hoping that we'll go into it very well. The next Friday, when we come back, we may tackle other portions as well, because we don't want to keep you for too long. We want to hammer on something that can be ingrained into our memories, that we can always remember that. If somebody asks you on the street, you can tell them that, hey, you're a black person. This is why you should establish roots in Africa, or consider that idea and work towards it. The first thing that we'll talk about today is peace and happiness. It looks so simple. I mean, because it's all the time. You know, the first thing that we believe that is very crucial, why any black person in the diaspora, especially for me, I'm so concerned about African Americans, is that in Africa, or why you should consider establishing roots in Africa, for not just you, but your next generation, is for peace and happiness. Now, when I talk about peace and happiness, we're looking at inner peace and outer peace. So inner peace in the sense that you're looking at the inside, how a person feels in the inside. How do you feel in the inside as a black person living in America, or as African American living in America? And that's all there is. You don't have a place like, let's say, for instance, me, for instance, of course, now with my wife, we can decide tomorrow, like we do technically every year, we can decide tomorrow that, look, we're going to Ghana for the next 1 year. We have established some roots over there that nobody can take away from us. When we're in America, we can here, but we also have established some roots somewhere that we can also move back to. And the reason why that is important, because that gives us a window to be able to have this peace that we're about to go into, and happiness that we're about to go into, the inward and the outward one. And we'll demonstrate to you why that is so crucial and it's important. And it's a good reason for you to think about establishing Africa, not just for you, but for your children and children's children, and for your family. Very important. Now, things that we'll be going through as we move along. And of course, here we come as a blend, because you have, of course, I was born in Ghana, lived in Ghana literally my entire life. Now, here's my wife who was born in America, lived in America. So she has an experience here. She's been to Ghana a number of times, so she has some experience there. But I have more experience in Africa, America. And I also, by the grace of God, seen this part as well. So when I talk, at least I have something to show. Because one thing I realize for those people who are watching us from Africa especially, sometimes they don't understand how Black people in America feel. Because no matter how much you try to explain to them, and before I came to America, it was same me. No matter how much you try to explain to them what it feels like to live in America as a Black person, it's hard for them to comprehend it because they can't appreciate it. That's the reality. I've been on both sides and I can tell you for a fact. But when you're on this side, you have a different perspective and a picture of the whole thing. Okay, now I wrote something down that I have never, this is my personal truth. This is my personal truth that I'm sharing. That I have never been really upset with another human being for no personal reason until I came to America. Think about this. I personally, my entire life in Africa, not even to the colonial master, was I so angry at or upset at throughout. For instance, if I see somebody that looks like the colonial master, I have no reason to be upset with them when I live in Africa. In fact, in Africa, for the most part, we welcome the colonial master with open arms because that's who we are. Okay. So personally, I never did that, but since I came to America, it's a different ballgame, and I'll show you why that is the case. You see, so look at a person like me who is living in Africa, babe, and I've never had a reason to just be upset with somebody else based on something which is happening around me. But for some reasons, I find myself upset. And I meet somebody on the street who has done absolutely nothing to me. In the moment, I have a reason to upset, which is wrong. Because think about it, this is going to affect me as a person. For reasons, upset with somebody on the street. Now, how do you feel that idea? Reasons you wake up tomorrow and maybe something you just meet somebody that looks like whoever did that thing and you just get upset. What does that look like for you?
I feel like that's something that, African Americans or Black people living in America deal with a lot. Because of the frustration, because of oppression, because of the way that it takes a toll on us when we do get frustrated, when we see someone who represents this institution of oppression, racism, it oftentimes, triggers something. And, it's not a great way to live. It's not a great way to live in it. And, that's why I think it's so important that people experience this peace that we're talking about. This sense of not having to think about your race or think about your skin color. And I experienced that for the first time when I was in Ghana. Just being in Ghana, blending in, nobody asking me about my skin color. My skin color just really didn't matter. And if I didn't open my mouth to speak, no one would have known that in fact, so many people would speak to me in Tree before I would open my mouth, and then they would realize that I'm not.
This one is not actually
from there.
Yeah, I mean, nobody really. Here's the thing: the reason is the case that a person just wakes up one morning and for some reasons they find themselves upset, and I've experienced that since being in this part of the world. It's because one, it's a historic thing. Now, so a lot of people, if you give birth to a newborn Black child today, as they grow up, the more they learn about the things that have happened to their predecessors, that automatically puts a type of anger in them. So it starts right from birth. So it's not something that they grow up and they see something and they have it. No, it comes right from the beginning, because once you hear, it triggers what is already there. So when a person is in this part of the world, look at me. Again, like I said, I moved from one part to this part. So I'm not even like somebody who was born and now has had their lineage, direct lineage, have that type of encounter. And once you hear the story, it becomes your story, it becomes a part of you. So even if you don't want to, inside of you, something is going on. And there are a lot of people who live in denial that well, I think I'm peaceful, I'm okay. I'm not having this experience from the past. So the historic trauma.
Or that I've dealt with these issues.
Exactly. The historic trauma is there. And then now you have the ongoing ones that keeps coming up. And when the ongoing, what you've already learned. about that looks like you over time, and that builds the anger. So this is where this whole thing is coming from. You look at current injustice, you look at historic things, and it creates some type of upset for no reason inside of you. And when you even meet somebody who has done nothing to you, but like you said, represents the institution that has caused this mess, then you tend to be upset towards them. And the danger in living like that is that, my dear, you're causing harm to your person, your spirit being. This is going to move on from generation after generation. But what a place like Africa gives you is that when you get up in the morning, you don't have triggers. You don't have things that is triggering that thing that is already lingering around. So you have a chance to heal. And we'll go in to talk about people who go through healing process. But you see, they have an event like what happened recently. It triggers it and you start afresh. So in America, every time you're starting afresh, because you try to build, to take away that anger, that upset, to enjoy some inner peace, you try to take that away, then something happens the next moment and it triggers it back and you relive that experience. And that is how people live consistently until they are no longer in this part of in the world again. But that is not a way to live. It's wrong for me to be upset with another human being when I meet them. But the problem is that sometimes you can't help it because the circumstances that are happening is constantly triggering something inside of you. So if you don't want to, it happens and then you go back right into it. Now you see, so this affects not just your innermost part, your inner peace, but also the outer part, your outer part. Okay, and we're saying that this eventually affects your peace, your inner peace and your outer peace, and we'll go into how we think that affects your inner and outer peace. Okay, now, like I mentioned before, that people make a lot of progress. I see a lot of people doing self-help, trying to get away some of the anger, trying to be at peace with themselves. They make progress, but the progress is temporary. I call it temporary comfort. So they get comfortable, they get okay, they're happy for the moment. They're peace at the moment because some people have been working on themselves. So they get peaceful, then there's a trigger. So we lose sight of what we could do to create permanent, if you like, solutions. So that when I'm uncomfortable here, I've established some roots somewhere else that I could go cool off. When everything is okay with me inside, I come back if I want to. So that is the option that Africa presents to us as Black people in America, that we don't have to be limited. In America and the diaspora, wherever you as a Black person in the world that you feel for some reasons things are not how you want it to be, and it's affecting your inner peace. And peace is a beautiful thing, my dear. Peace is a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm actually, I'm thinking about it a lot as I'm sitting here, just thinking about the recent turn of events. Black people, when they deal with these things, another death happens and it's like, we protest, we try to find solutions, and then, the person who did this atrocity or murder, they're held accountable, or maybe they're not held accountable. And then things just seem to go back to normal until there is essentially another trigger. And we don't realize it, but we have these almost like invisible chains that we wear, where we can't be ourselves in the workplace, where we have to feel like people don't understand what's going on, where we feel like, if we speak up about how we're feeling inside, we may be, ostracized by our coworkers, or we may be ostracized by the company, or we may be painted as somebody who is just overly sensitive. But, these are real things that we carry with us. And, we're not realizing the effect on us. We think that we're healed from it because we're living, we're enjoying life, we're listening to music, we're hanging out with friends, up until another event happens, and now it comes spiraling. And the
funny thing, it's not funny, but the serious thing, the ironic thing about all of this is the next time, maybe it could be you that will be stopping somebody. It will be your incident. I'm sure the gentleman that just passed didn't think about the fact that the next time there will be an awakening where somebody's inner peace will be taken away, will be because of nobody really thinks about that. It could be me, it could be you, it could be anybody else. But reality is that this is something that we face. We're fighting for it. We're fighting for justice. We're fighting to make sure the right thing is done. All we're saying, we're proposing, we're putting on the table is that consider taking roots in Africa as well, so that when you give back to children, like I said, they have a place to go cool off if they want to. For some reasons, it gives them that,
I would say it just gives them a different reality. So,
exactly.
So, for instance, we understand, we almost program, and I hate to say it, it's heartbreaking here that a young child is being prepped to deal with racism, but it's our reality as Black people here in America to have to sit down. Oh, this is how we as Black people are treated in America, or to even have to sit down and explain, a video where somebody is being murdered because of their skin color. It's just hard for a child to understand. And as much as we want to create a picture for our children that this is a reality for them, it also programs them certain way, programs their mind that there are certain limitations for me as a Black person, that there are certain limitations for me as a young Black woman or young Black man in America. And these are the things that we walk around with every single day. And so by allowing a child to grow in our environment where that's not their reality, you just change the whole thing for them.
Everything.
Now they're growing up in a place where their skin color doesn't matter. What matters is what's inside of them. What matters is the character.
Who they choose to become.
Yeah, who they choose to become.
See, there's a story that I had yesterday, which I think is very crucial to what you're saying. And that goes to talk about the outward piece that we're talking about. So the challenge, your inner piece is being challenged every single day. And your outward piece is also being challenged. Now, this gentleman shared an experience which I thought was crazy. His name is Sam Richards. He's a Black guy whose mom is a Ghanaian. And yesterday on the Conan's show, he actually shared some experiences that he has had growing up as a Black person in America. And he shared, an experience where he talked about his existence every single day being a threat. When you grow as a Black person in America, it's like your very existence is being threatened every single day. Your existence is being threatened every single day. And he shared about the fact that he had an experience where he went to visit his girlfriend and he parked his car somewhere. And for some reasons, there's a drunk driver drove right towards his car and hit into a pole. So now everybody comes out. He comes out to figure out what's happening. And of course, the police has been called. And the police comes around trying to figure out, this is a drunk driver who has run into a pole and somebody has parked their car there. Black guys parked their car there. Now, this gentleman comes out and he's trying to, of course, check his car and he's explaining to the police officer that, look, this is my car. I mean, there was nothing really here. This person drunk driving ran into this thing. And he said as he was approaching the policeman to explain, the way the policeman screamed, go back, what? Go back, started pulling his weapon. And he was so surprised because this is a drunk driving case that somebody has drove into his car. And the policeman is seeing him as a threat and is pulling his weapon for no reason. And he says he called his dad and his dad told him, remember the statement he made. He said, remember. What should he remember? He's a Black person in a place like America.
Yeah.
So your very existence, your outward piece is being challenged every single day. And that is not a good way to live your entire life. That's all we're saying. And that is, especially for the next generation, that is not a good way to build a child up from the beginning. If that's the only way, that would be a disaster. That would be a disaster. But we can change that by establishing some roots and so that the next generation have a place that they can get away from all of these things that is happening. All of these things that even if it means enjoy some sanity even before you pass for 5 years, 10 years. This is something that you want to look at, because I'm telling you, you can't experience when you're in a place of war, you can never really know how much valuable peace really, or inner peace and outer peace really is. And I'm telling you, Africa is a place that you can have that. We're not saying run from America, no. But we're saying there's another alternative that you could consider. So you now have 2 places that you can always go back to and raise your kids and do anything you want to do.
And it's important to make the connection now. So oftentimes we as Black people may say, oh, I mean, yeah, I know my people came from Africa, but I don't know anybody there. You know, well, right now, there's something happening. There's something happening where Africa is welcoming you home. You have multiple bridges, multiple pathways to make it back. And you can now take the step to say, I'm going to make that connection so that now my children or my descendants, they now have that ability to say, okay, well, grandma or mom or whoever already made that connection. So I know that I have a place to go back, I know that I've remade or reconnected to the continent.
So let me share this funny example. My wife doesn't want me to share it, but I'll definitely share it. So this is my personal experience. I grew up in Ghana, in Africa, and I've never had certain experience until I came to America. Okay. And I've never even seen it because sometimes it's hard to come across some of these information in Africa. Now, here am I in America, all these things are happening, and we're sitting in a car, we're driving on the street, and I had a fruit. Normally, I like to walk with some fruit, like some banana or something. So I had a banana. I wish I had a banana to demonstrate this to you. I had a banana in my backpack, on the side. So now I'm sitting in the passenger seat. I'm trying to reach out for my banana to have a banana. Now, but as I held the banana, the shape of a banana, it feels something like a gun. Okay, it feels like a gun. And growing up as a child in Africa, of course, we have toy guns for Christmas to play with them and all of that. I know they do that here. But nobody ever tells you that, hey, that could be a threat or anything of that sort. Okay? So I'm reaching out for the banana and I just decided to make a joke because it felt like a gun. I forgot myself where I was actually. Yeah. And I brought a banana out and I did like I was aiming at something with a banana like a gun. And the way my wife screamed and yelled, like I had lost my life. But it was funny at the time because I was laughing. I didn't catch it. But then when I came to my senses and I realized that, whoa.
Why would you do
it? Banana like a gun, like I was aiming at a gun because somebody even fired aiming at them because I was just making a joke with a banana. I was serious. And if I do this every day, my outward peace is challenged. I can't be peaceful with myself because every time I have to be calculative of what I do. Because when you're very cautious, things can happen. How much more when you're not cautious? That is how serious it is. Now, here's the thing about Africa. Let's take you to Africa now. And we speak more to Ghana because, of course, that's where I grew up from. That's where we've lived. So we can speak more to Ghana, but it cuts across the continent. There are a lot of amazing places you can find this peace we're talking about on the continent of Africa. But I speak to Ghana. Now, the first thing when you come to Africa that you realize is that everybody looks like you.
True.
Now, think about it. When you find yourself, the first surprise I had when I came to America is that the majority of everybody I was seeing didn't look anything like me. That was the first shock that I had living in Africa my entire life. I've been to different parts of Africa. I never had that experience. So the first thing that you have as affects your inner peace is the fact that everybody looks like you. When you wake up in the morning, you step out of your door, the people that you see looks just like
politician, it doesn't matter. Black people are in all positions of power.
Exactly. And I had this guy talk about, Jim Morrison talk about the fact that he does that when he went to Ghana, that he was spaced with the president and all his clients and everybody looking just like him. Yeah. That was amazing to find. Yeah. And I'm telling you, you may take it for granted, but that gives you some type of inner peace. And if you live like that for 2 years, 3 years, you become a different person. That's a reality. You enjoy something that a lot of people don't get to enjoy in their lifetime. And again, like I keep emphasizing, we're not saying don't live in America, no, but we're saying have a place that you can go to and enjoy some peace and at least come back at any time you want. You've established some roots there. If your children they can decide where they want to be, whether they want to live in Ghana, live in Sierra Leone, live in Gambia, live in wherever or they want to live in America. Give them that opportunity. Yeah. That's what we're asking. So that's the first thing that affects your peace when it comes to Africa. And of course, it tends to affect your happiness because Trust me, when everybody looks like you, that's pretty amazing. And the second part that we'll dive into has to do with the family nature of society. That someone is always looking out for you.
That's
and my wife
true.
can share that and experience with that. It doesn't mean there are no bad people in Africa. There's some bad people in Africa, but I'm telling you, for the most part, as a society, you have people looking out for you. Trust me, you have people looking out for you. In Africa, we said that it takes a community to raise a child, or a village to raise a child.
Think
about it. Okay, think about it. But in Africa, you have that real experience.
That's true.
Here it's hard for somebody else to check another person's child. But in Africa, somebody will discipline your child and your parents will come and thank them. That's how it takes a community or a village to really raise a child. So that's something you get, the family nature.
Yeah, it used to be like that. Nowadays, you got parents who get upset when someone disciplines their child. But yes, there was once a time when
exactly,
it was like
you
that.
can have to. So that goes to tell you that every single time that you wake up and your child has an interview with a black family, where they said in America that every time their child goes out, they don't have peace of mind until he shows up in the door.
That's true.
What type of way to live for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years until you pass? That is a type of peace that we're talking about, that people need to understand. That when you establish roots in Africa, you're giving your child that opportunity, that privilege that I believe they're entitled to as black people born in America, or as Africans born to that. So that's something you want to so that you can sleep and know that your child is safe for the most part.
I see a lot of people who are, getting ready to have babies, are like, they're really going back and forth with this. Like, what type of world am I bringing my newborn into? Like, and let it be someone who's about to have a son. It's just like, how will I have peace knowing what type of world I'm about to bring a child into, where they'll be judged by the color of their skin, where they'll be looked at as a threat by the police day in and day out. It doesn't really matter what they do. It doesn't matter how educated they become. They still are targeted. And so that's so traumatic to live with something like that.
You see, there's something that Africans in Africa take for granted. In Africa, when you tell somebody that the police is your friend, they laugh at you. It sounds funny. Like, if you tell somebody, hey, the police is your friend, it sounds funny. But when I came to America and I began thinking about that notion of the police being your friend, I realized that in actual fact, in Africa, police is really your friend. I'm telling you, the police is your friend, because look at this. I was thinking about this whole idea about peace and happiness bit, and in relation to the police, because today is the police doing all the dirty work with racism and all of that, doing the most part. They can be better. They have a lot of good ones, but they can be better. But I was thinking about this whole police is your friend thing about Africa, and the fact that we laugh about it. Like nobody, you kind of, in Africa, you kind of feel like you don't trust the police, not because they take away your life or anything, but because they'll waste your time on the road. Waste your time. That's all there is. But here's the thing, Mandy, I was thinking about this thing, and I noted something down, which I thought was very serious. When the police stops you, the last thing, or in Africa, let me start with Africa. In Africa, when a policeman stops you, here's the beauty that the policeman thinks about is his gun. Most of them may not even have a gun.
Yeah, that's
the last thing that a policeman thinks about you on the road, either you're walking, either you've done something, whatever it is, if you're driving, you're speed driving or whatever, when he stops you, the last thing that he thinks about is his gun. Think about it. When a policeman stops you, the last thing he thinks about. And then I said, so when somebody tells you the police is truly your friend, you take it for granted. But when I show you what happens when a policeman stops you, then you begin to appreciate it. And that's why I'm talking about peace and happiness. Think about it. Now, so here's the thing. The police in Africa will rather take your money than your life. When I say take your money, in other words, when a policeman stops you, ordinarily from any part of the world, maybe in America we call it ticket or anything. If it's a fine or anything, like the gentleman that just passed, of course, what the crime that he reported was committed,
who was murdered, the gentleman that was
murdered, George. It's more or less like something that he could get a fine, or even if he goes to prison for some time, it's not anything grievous.
Yeah,
okay, he didn't shoot anybody, he didn't kill anybody.
Yeah.
Now, so when someone in Africa, the policeman stops in Africa, what comes to his mind is how I'm going to get this guy to get some money, either to give it to the government, okay, or to make him pay for a fine or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. It's about money from you, and your life is the last thing that he thinks about. So when a policeman stops you in Africa, he'd rather take your money than your life. Now, but in America, when a policeman stops you, he'd rather take your life as a black person than your money. Because where he could simply give you a ticket and call it a day, that, hey, you shouldn't have been walking down this road, so you have a ticket for it, he's going to, the first thing he thinks about,
escalated,
it takes your life.
Else.
What are you doing here? What are you doing here? He fires. And there are several instances where you see that you have a situation where a policeman stops you, and instead of taking your money, he takes your life. Think about it, resources and life. But when a policeman stops you in Africa, he doesn't think about your life. He thinks about getting some money from you to the States or for whatever reason. That's how serious, that's how your outward peace and happiness is challenged. So every time that a policeman stops you, something triggers inside of you. And what a way to live. Mm-hmm. I'm telling you, a lot of people live in denial. And some people feel like there's no way out. So your way out is to bottle it up and deal with it. But here's what we are saying. That there's a place called Africa where black people live, where everybody is black. And that's where we only came from. But for some reason, we find ourselves here. We're saying that, look, there's a place you can actually come back to and establish some roots. Don't run away from America. Don't put in mind that you're running from America. No, you're establishing roots somewhere and giving yourself and your next generation some opportunity to enjoy real peace and happiness when you wake up every morning. You're giving them that. You're giving that to them. I'm telling you, especially for the next generation, that they can pick baggage and go to a place that they can call home, and they're established right there. Mm-hmm. That's something we want people to consider. And today we have no excuses. With all that is happening, you want to begin to wake up and look and relook at Africa. If you're somebody who has not thought about it, you want to begin to consider and take steps. And there are people to help you. You can get help. Trust me, there are a lot of and amazing people to help you. And of course, we're also here to help you. And the next thing that I want to talk about is family and mm-hmm. community. Mm-hmm. I talked about everybody and family, and tying that into your happiness as a person. Okay. True. Now, everywhere you go in Africa, you find family. That's one thing. It's not just about in America. When we have all these holiday picnics or parties, I should call them, it's about just a few families. It's just those who know themselves. So that's about where you find family. But when you're in the grocery shop, when you find yourself somewhere else, most of the part in the streets and everything, you're on your own. Mm-hmm. You know, but in Africa, you find family everywhere. I'm telling you, I remember one time, went with my former boss, who's a lovely lady, I call her mommy, Miss Sandra. I went to the town with her, very local man. Mm-hmm. My former boss is a very powerful woman, and, you would expect that she would be very, very strict when she goes to the very typical market. Mm-hmm. And I went with her. And every single stand we went to, it was like she knew them 5 years ago before getting there. And that is the market that I least expected, that she's going to, like what I call finding family everywhere you go to. And everybody were excited, like we're talking like we knew ourselves. And that's what Africa presents you when I say you find family everywhere. In the market, in the streets.
And I don't know. I think it's something about the culture of America, and that's why I advocate so hard just for people to go and experience. You don't even have to move. Just go and experience what it's like to be in Africa. Because here in America, it's like this cloud that's over us when we're ingrained that our number one, and people don't like to admit it, but their number one priority that's ingrained in them is a job. And they don't like to admit that the job comes before their family, their spouse, whoever. The job comes before their family. That, okay. And this is why I say that it does. Because it's what feeds them. It's what allows them to live. Okay. And so unconsciously, yes, it does sometimes come before family. And there will maybe some people who disagree, who say, oh, I don't care about my job like that. But there are some people who literally, maybe their mom might ask them to go do something for them. And it's like, oh, I don't have time to do that. Mom, I got to get up and I got to go to work in the morning. Or like, I got so much work that I have my job. And that is the reason why we are not able to connect with people on a, just on a human level. And I don't have that when, like, people are not really concerned about those things. It's about connecting. And I just feel so, this connection with people that I just don't get here.
That's the next point that I was going to. People genuinely care.
People genuinely
care.
care.
People genuinely care.
And people have the time to care, because here we just don't have the time to connect with people. We do the fake, we do the status quo here because we feel like, oh, that's what somebody can get out of me because I'm just so busy with everything else in my life, in my world. But if we were to pull away and see what it truly feels like to be in a community that cares about you, then you would realize that we can do so much better.
Yeah, you're going. There's no pause. There's no pause. There's no pause to really soak even what you're building in. You're just going.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things too that is advantageous about Africa and how you find peace and happiness in Africa. It's one of the good think of establishing roots for yourself and your next generation in Africa. Because you see, the reality is that Africa people say it's slow. It's a slow pace.
Yeah,
it's a slow pace
that's
place.
Good for us.
No, that's
sometimes
really good. I'm telling you, take it
just
for granted, but
stop,
it's good.
Be grateful, just bask and figure out where we're going.
Going.
Yeah, we
no
wake up.
Time to.
We wake up. We go to our jobs. We have lunch. We do some more work. We play. We do all of these things. We come home. We go exercise, eat dinner, barely spend time with our family sometimes. And then we get up and we do it all over again. And then we spend, we have some time on the weekends to be with family. Oops, time's up. Time to go back to work. Like,
we're not saying people should not work.
No.
People should work, but people must have time to live. And one of the things Africa presents you, if you talk to anybody who's gone to move to Africa or has taken roots in Africa and has lived in Africa for quite a long time, they'll tell you one of the things they enjoy is the peace that comes with the slow-paced nature of the place. Everything is kind of slow. And like I was saying, you find family everywhere in the community, in the streets. And let me give you another amazing example about Africa that talks to the things that I'm talking about. And I had a story I think you shared with me of somebody who were driving on the streets and somebody, and I've had this experience with you where somebody does something and maybe I try to shout at them on the street and you're like, no, don't do that, because people are walking about with so much anger in them that a mere roadside brawl, like you're in a car and somebody crosses you wrongly, you tell them, could result in somebody coming to shoot you and kill you. And I've had that testimony firsthand that is happening here rampantly. But you're talking about Africa where, in fact, that incident that happened in the street where somebody crosses you and you tell them something is actually a fun time for people to laugh about. Actually, that even brings more joy to your face when you're going. You get upset in a moment, but the next second is a funny situation and you're laughing about it.
Yeah,
and you don't even think about somebody's coming back to crush you and shoot you. That's how, and this is all a mind thing. When we talk about peace and happiness, it's a mind thing, because all of this tends to affect you without any kind of burden on your mind. And why would anybody not want to have this experience? I'm telling you, it's possible if people really plan and make this happen, not just for themselves, but for the next generation. As we're going through all these times, this is a time for us to sit down and really think and plan things out. The last thing that I want to talk about briefly has to do with the fact that, in Africa, if you can share testimony with that, just like finding family everywhere, in the streets, in the trotro, in the buses, on the road, in the market, everywhere, you have something to laugh about.
That's true.
That is very important. I'm telling you,
laughing.
And In Africa, I'm telling you, you always have something to laugh about. When you go to the market, you'll find something to laugh about. When you sit in the bus, you'll find something to laugh about. Even if you drive your own car on the road, you'll find something to laugh about. When you meet a policeman on the street and he stops you, I'm telling you, by the time he's done with you, you'll find something to laugh about. So there's always something that puts a smile on your face, that puts some type of joy on your face.
Yeah.
I was telling
you recently that that's what I miss the most right now. Like, I miss laughing on a daily basis, multiple times a day, because there's just, people are just free spirited. Because it's not much to really worry about.
Something when I came to America, when I take my phone and I go on the internet or I go to check out what's happening, it's always something that gives me a reason to be upset. That's a reality. When I turn on the television, it's something that gives me a reason to be upset. But let me tell you, in Africa, when you turn on your television, you have all our pastors and all kinds of magicians and all kinds of people doing all kinds of things on television that makes you you really laugh your heart out. You can laugh and you get to the ground. When you turn on your television, there's so many funny things happening that you can laugh about. Even the way the presenter is talking to you is quite interesting. So that's the joy that comes to you when you establish roots in Africa. It's a beautiful thing. You can't express what
I wanted to share this, and sorry to backtrack, but I felt like it was a good part to plug this in. So one that I noticed that's different from here, when talking about people caring and the whole communal society of Africa and all of that, things that are not the same here. So for instance, here there's this spirit of what I work for is mine, and I look out for me and mine. And I just noticed that that's not the case. That's not the case when you're in Africa. And